Do you remember Sprout? Okay. Okay. Welcome to the Zay Zay Zone. I am Isaiah Nix. Okay. Alright, so today we can talk about a former TV network. So if you grew up with cable and you were born, after the year, let's say 2000, okay? Because it's been out 2005. If you were alive, around that time, up until about, I would say 2013 maybe, you should know what Sprout was. So, yeah, Sprout was a cable channel, okay? So let's get into the development stages of Sprout. So, on October 20th, 2004, PBS announced into a partnership with cable provider Comcast and production companies Hit Entertainment and Sesame Street to launch a 24-hour cable channel aimed at preschool children. According to the PBS vice president of Digital Ventures, Darren Triff, he said it was created to strengthen the competitive positions. And knew that the content will be consistent with PBS's values and meet certain curricular objectives and have been tested to educational efficacy, something like that. Okay, so basically, Sprout begins its earliest development in 2004 with three big people like PBS, Hit Entertainment, Sesame Street. Like PBS is that channel that airs stuff from Hit Entertainment. Hit Entertainment makes Barney. Well, it used to make Barney and what else? Bob the Builder and stuff like that. And Sesame Workshop made Sesame Street. Everybody knows that one. So yeah, now the early years of Sprout. Okay, Sprout. The early years, I would consider it from 2005 to about 2009. I would say that's the earliest years of Sprout because they were still getting in that budget and they still haven't really did anything with their channel yet. So yeah, I call 2005, 2009 the early years of Sprout. So Sprout didn't have much of a budget, but it was able to acquire multiple programs from PBS, Hit Entertainment, and Sesame Workshop. With shows like Caillou, Barney and Friends, Bob the Builder, Sesame Street, Play Me Sesame, and much more. It didn't really have many original stuff at the start because it was a new channel, of course, so it didn't have much new content to put out. Like, it didn't really have anything to give to feed the children at the time. So they just aired, stuff from PBS, like Bob the Builder, Caillou, stuff like that, Barney, Sesame Street. But it did, start out with some programming blocks. It started with the popular Goodnight Show, with the girl and the star and they sing Goodnight. I used to love that, but I can get into that. And then 2 years later, they brung out the network staple. She's definitely the staple of Sprout because she was the main thing in Sprout for like 10 years until they just decided to cut it off. Chica. So they decided to launch the Sunside Up show in 2007. So morning Sunside Up, night the Goodnight Show. So it was like a morning night programming block. So, and that's all they really had at the time besides shorts made for the network. And that's about it because they didn't have enough money to do much more. And this is where I get to the peak years. The peak years of Sprout, I would say between 2010 and 2014. I say this because during that time they were able to achieve multiple things, such as making their own programs, like full 10-minute programs, So yeah, so Sprout had more money to start producing their own shows, and they produced in their first show they produced was called Noodle and Doodle, They had the host from Sunset Up show, Sean, curly hair, and then he had his little friend Doodle with curly hair too. Doodle. I say Doodle. I said Doodle. It sounds kind of the same, but who cares? And it ran for 2 seasons. All right, and then before Sprout continued to use the higher budget for more shows, they decided to give the Goodnight Show a set upgrade. And before that, before that, they decided to make the Sunset Up show to 7 days a week, Monday to Sunday. 'Cause at one point it was just Monday to Friday, but they changed it to Monday to Sunday because they had more budget to make more time and more money. So good for Sprout, all right? Good for Sprout. And then in 2012, they were able to open up another show after Noodle and Doodle got canceled, unfortunately. They decided to make the Chica show, with Chica from Santa Up show, and then Kelly was one of the shop workers, and then her parents, then Chica's parents, Mrs. C, Mr. C, and then you have many other characters on the show. It was a cool show. I liked it when I first saw it. But yeah, and that was basically the peak years of Sprout, because they were able to use their money to the best way they can, make more programs out of shows that they already have, So they did a great job trying to do that, and I was glad to be able to watch it at that time. But, it ran for 2 seasons just like Noodle and Doodle, and it got canceled in 2014, unfortunately, which is okay, but things had to get canceled eventually. Nothing gets last forever. But in 2014, this is when the biggest change of Sprout happened. And this is when we get to getting close to the final years of Sprout. But in 2014, NBC Universal was purchased, half of it was purchased by Comcast, and Comcast kept on, putting more money into NBC Universal, and they were able to get more, out of it. After that happened, by full ownership of NBC Universal from General Electric in 2014, and they were able to get more shares out of Sprout for, NBC Universal, and they basically owned 100% of Sprout in 2014, and that's when the network began to change, unfortunately. So we get into the final years of Sprout. And I consider this the 2 last years of Sprout. 2015, the 3 last, my phone moved. I consider 2015 to 2017. So if you were on Sprout at this time, you would notice that in early and mid 2015, it was not really any changes to the Sprout network. It was the same as it was for the past 6 years, in my opinion, with a few minor changes like the PBS Kids part being removed from the Sprout logo, which is pretty much normal. However, for the network's 10th anniversary, they decided to go through a rebrand. They underwent a rebrand, which some fans didn't like. And yeah, many of its programs moved production from Philadelphia to New York. Like Sunset Up show. This one he messed with that show. So it's a chicken, okay, who lives in a barn and do a show every single morning to kids. All right, you gonna move her from her barn to a studio in New York? She was in the barn for 8 years, y'all. 8 years. And you gonna just change it like that? Like she's like a puppet? Oh, she's a puppet. People started, getting upset about these major changes because they didn't like how it was going, because they were used to the same stuff. But now they're changing the formula up, and it started to get to a point where everybody started to think like, yo, this is the end of Sprout. I don't understand why this happened. And then in 2016, it was announced that NBC Universal was planning on relaunching Sprout as Universal Kids. Many families were upset about this because, many hit, PBS and Sesame shows were shown less. The favorited programming blog, The Good Night Show, started to be aired infrequently, which is unfortunately sad, but things happen like that. As of 2021, Sprout is still dead. There's no chance of revival. It's now Universal Kids. But people started to post, content from Sprout, on TikTok, Reddit, stuff like that. So yeah. So basically people are bringing their childhood to social media, people who haven't seen it before, or to share the same memory with people who have seen it before, back when it was at its top, at its prime, at the top of the world, at the top of the rock, But yeah, but in 2023, Sprout lives on in the memories of many families, including myself, who used to watch the network every single day. And that's why I say right now that Sprout will always be loved, but not forgotten. But yeah, thank you for watching the video. Subscribe, like the video, and yeah, I'll see you guys again in the next video. Peace, y'all.